Okay, now earlier we heard from Aneco Eagle Mine CEO Sean Boyd on why he's bullish on gold. Some states are also seeing value in the commodity. You have Utah, which just signed into law, a law that I should say would make it easier to pay taxes and to do business in gold and silver. Other states like Colorado, North Carolina, they're considering similar measures. Of course, it's all part of a bigger backlash against the Fed, monetary stimulus, and fears of a watered-down dollar. So in today's Reaganomics, I'm asking, should we be bringing back the gold standard? We want to bring in Rob McEwen, Chairman and CEO of McEwen Mining. He is also the founder and former CEO of Gold Corp. Welcome to you, Rob. We also have with us Michael Crofton, our guest host for the entire show. All right, starting with you, Rob, what's the case to be made for bringing back the gold standard?
It's the ultimate currency. It can't be replicated quickly, and it's a store of value that's crossed the millennium. Right now, we're seeing the purchasing power decrease, and they're taking away from everybody who puts money in the bank.
Might this enforce some discipline on behalf of our lawmakers, on behalf of the Fed, which seem to be, you know, you look at the Fed printing money in enormous quantities like we have never seen before. We're looking at record debt levels, near 16 trillion, levels we've never previously seen before. Would it bring back discipline to the system?
Absolutely.
The horse is already out of the barn, so I don't think it could ever work given the amount of financing that we have to do, both deficit financing and just operational financing. Plus the deficits are so huge, and the traditional way that our country and other countries, European countries, Asian countries, even the emerging markets have gotten out of these deficits is through inflation. And while gold would instill a discipline, clearly it would hinder the ability of the fiscal authorities to operate effectively in addressing the deficits.
You know, but I would say, look, we did it for years, right? I mean, you think back to Bretton Woods, which happened, you know, during World War II, and you had 730 delegates from 44 ally nations that gathered at none other than the Mount Washington Hotel in my home state of New Hampshire. In fact, I have gone to this very hotel, and I have gone to the gold room where they made this decision. They have it basically enshrined there at the hotel. But basically, this decision, Bretton Woods, required countries around the world, allied countries, to tie gold to their currency. And it's something that we here in the U.S. did for many, many years, right up until 1971. And Rob, as you said earlier, didn't necessarily hurt us.
We've had enormous credit expansion over the last 30 years, and it's been undisciplined. And it's got us to a point where we have a lot of leverage, and we can't keep going. The base is too small now from what we're levering off of. You have to go back, and you probably have to have a new value for gold, a much higher value for gold, to allow Michael's economy to grow.
Yeah, but unfortunately that shifts the power. Let's talk about it politically. That shifts the power from the debtor nations to the creditor nations, and we don't want the creditor nations to have as much power as we do right now. So I don't think that this country would ever consider going back on a gold standard, given the needs for deficit financing, the needs for transfer payments and for entitlement programs. And until we're able to address those issues, then I think the gold standards are way back on the back burner.
But maybe Ron's making the point that we would be forced to address these issues, whether we liked it or not, if we had that discipline in place. Let me just throw out
couldn't happen.
A few, issues, practical issues, right? Is there really enough gold in the world for us to return to the standard?
Depends on the price you value it at.
Rob, isn't the gold in the world basically a constant? I read one somewhere that there's an ounce of gold for every person on Earth, and it basically remains constant at that level. In other words, as there are more people on Earth, there's more and more ounces of gold mined.
I've never looked at it that way, Michael.
It's an interesting way to think about it. But then back to what you're saying here, Michael, that we're going to lose our ability as a nation, as a power, to control our monetary policy.
Correct.
We want to be able to flood the supply of money in times of need, and we want to be able to restrict it when it's not needed as much.
And if we have a gold standard, the gold becomes the reserve currency. And the United States then cedes its position as the world's reserve currency.
Doesn't that worry you, Rob? I mean, that we would be ceding our sort of control, if you would, over to gold.
We would lose the ability of controlling our growth. But you could take Fort Knox and just lift the value to a point that the price of gold is much higher to allow us to go forward.
Where would that price be? theoretically?
Oh, you're north of $10,000 an ounce.
Wow.
Well, wouldn't that be an artificial mechanism, similar to what the gold bugs tell us we're using now to
But don't we
take
do
care
that?
of it? We do, but I mean, so we're going to exchange one artificial mechanism for another. I'm just wondering how that flies in the face of the discipline and the stability that the gold standard would allegedly bring.
I mean, if we're going to then set gold prices and say, well, we think they need to be $10,000 an ounce, then you're artificially imposing another mechanism on the market.
I saw a very interesting study recently that showed if you bought at the opening and sold at the close since 2001 forward, and you bought gold, you'd be down 70%. If you bought it and held it to today, you'd be up 500%. So the market opens strong, closes weak here, and in Asia it goes up, Europe it goes up.
How does this relate to making gold the standard
well, it's just,
currency?
it's accepted worldwide, and someone right now seems to be moving the price a bit.
I can't buy gasoline with it now, though.
In Utah, you
No,
could.
you can. In
Well, you
Utah,
know,
yeah.
well, the states, you know, some of the states are probably trying to return to the time when they had their own currencies. Into the mid-1800s, states had their own currencies.
Well, that would be something,
right?
Texas would probably like that.
They had their own currency.
All right. Thanks so much. We appreciate it. Spirited, interesting, fascinating discussion. Rob McEwen, Chairman and CEO of McEwen Mining, and our guest host, Michael Crofton from Philadelphia Trust. You've been our guest host for the whole day. Thank you so much for coming on board. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.